Pay homage to the Triple Gem. Arhang Sama Samputo Pakawa Bhutang Pakawantang Apiwa Demi. Soakato Pakawata Damo Dhammang Namasami. Subhatipano Pakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Let's homage to the Blessed One. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the perfectly self-awakening One. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the perfectly self-awakening One. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the perfectly self-awakening One. We're going to continue reading out of the essentials of Buddhadhamma, the teachings and practice of Theravada tradition. We're leaving off. We're going back and forth from the Essential Buddhadhamma and Buddhadhamma. There are two different books, but by the same person, Binku Payuto, translated. Here we're talking about the six sense basis, the fears of awareness, or the spheres. They have them classified as the way of cognition. And this breaks down in depth so it could lead into the dependent origination, which ayatana, or the sixth sense basis, is one of the factors of the conditions. And here it explains the fact that the awareness of the world makes use of the six channels. The channels of the eye, the channels of the ear, the channels of the nose, the body, and the mind to cognize and to experience the world, which appears to us as an attribute and features known to the six cognitive objects, aramana, form, sound, smell, tastes, intangible objects, and mental objects. The sector of expression of action upon the world makes use of these three channels, by body, by speech, and by mind, to make responses to the world, express in bodily action, express in bodily speech, and express in thoughts. The first factor of the word in Pali, Datwara, is usually dropped in favor of the term ayatana. This means the sphere of connection that gives rise to knowledge, or the path of awareness in simple text. For the purpose of this discussion, we will use the word ayatana rather than Datwara. Regarding the second sector, the process included into the fourth skandha, sankhara, mental formations. The volitional activities or mental formation of sankhara khanda, are where there are many, divided into good, evil, and neutral, will emerge in and operate in intention as their leader or representative, choosing or assigning the factors to condition expressings or activities through these three dawara or ayatana, by body, by speech, and by mind. This is constituted of kama, the state of action, deed, of speech and thoughts. In this case, sankhara, mental formations, are reclassified in conformity with the role that they play, according to the path through which they function, as follows. Kaya sankhara, vachi sankhara, and mano sankhara. Volitional actions through the body, volitional activities through the speech, and volition activities through the mind. They are also called Kaya Sanchetana, Vachi Sanya Chetana, and Mano Cetana. Intention through body, intention through speech, and intention through mind. Although consciousness must depend on it for arising on contact between ayatana and its object, the appearance of an object to a sense base does not always lead to vijnana. There must be a factor of attention, intention, and interest for vijnana to arise. For example, at certain times, as when deeply asleep, distracted, absent-minded, immersed in some task or another, or even in states of deep concentration, many sights and sounds that arise within the range of sight or hearing are not seen or heard. When concentrating on writing, one may be not aware of the parts of the body contacting the chest or the desk or the chair, the hand touching the paper or finger on a pencil or pencil. When the sense base and the objects come within range of each other, but no consciousness arises, cognition has not yet have to arisen. Cognition arises only when the arising of these three factors, ayatana, which is the sense base, aramana, which is the object, and vijnana is the consciousness. This condition is technically called basa. Literally, basa means contact. But in Buddhism, it specifically refers to the meaning or the convergence of the sense-based cognitive object and consciousness. Simply speaking, basa is awareness. This basa, or cognition, is named according to the organ through which it functions, giving 6 kinds of contact: eye basa, ear basa, nose basa, tongue basa, body basa, the mind being the 6th basa. Basa is as an important stage in the cognitive process when contact has been made. A process is set in motion, beginning with feeling in response to the object, and then to the other mental reactions. Noting the fabrication around the object and all the ensuing outward expressions. Within this process, the factor of particular interest is the feeling that arises immediately following the contact. This feeling is called vedana, which means experiencing or tasting of an object. It is an impression of a sense objects, either as pleasant or unpleasant or indifferent, divided according to the channels of cognition. Vedana is of 6 kinds. The feelings that arise from visual contact, the feelings that arise from auditory contact, and so on. However, if classified according to the quality, there are 3 kinds of feeling: sukha, dukkha, and adukkha ma sukha. Sukha is comfortable, happy, and pleasant. Dukkha is uncomfortable, painful. Adukkha ma sukha, neither pleasant nor unpleasant, indifferent, also called neutral feeling, upekkha. Another classification is into the 5 kinds. Sukha, pleasing bodily feeling. Dukkha, unpleasant bodily feeling, pain. Somanasa, pleasant mental feeling, happiness. Domanasa, unpleasing mental feeling, sorrow. And upekkha, indifference, neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling. Equanimity, upekkha, one of the 4 Brahma viharas. The cognitive process so far described can be illustrated as the sense door plus the object plus consciousness equals contact, with the results being feeling. So cognitive objects of the world as they appear to human through the 6th sense basis, ayatana. The cognitions of these objects enables us to interact with the world, to function and survive. Vedana is an important factor in the cognitive process, serving as a mechanism that informs us what is harmful to life and what to be avoided, and what is supportive to life and what is benefited from. Thus, feeling enables the subsequent cognitive process to acquire more comprehensive and profitable knowledge and understanding. For ordinary unenlightened person, however, that is not all that feeling is. It is not just an additional factor in the cognitive process to complement knowledge and thereby increase our ability to lead a good life. It also represents something that the world has to offer as a reward or prize. This reward is delicious state, the pleasure that arises from cognitive objects known as sukha vedana. One's cognitive process has advanced to feeling. If we become attached to feeling in this sense, we will deviate from the cognitive process, allowing another process to take over, in which Vedana becomes the prime factor for producing further consequences. At the same time, the cognitive process, which has assumed a secondary role, is corrupted by the force of the new process and veers away from the truth. The process has taken over usually operates according to the simple and basic model. When an object is cognized and pleasant feeling arises, it is followed by desire, tanha. 3 kinds of tanha: kama tanha, bhava tanha, and vibhava tanha. We will discuss that later on in later chapters. But the following desired by tanha: when there is desire, the mind becomes involved and attached to the extent that clinging, upatana, arises. The mind becomes obsessed and cannot be let go, even though the object cannot really be held into, since it has already passed away. From there, the mind begins to imagine itself to be in possession of that cognitive object, and to devise ways and means by acquiring it, prompting actions through body, actions through speech, and to obtain desired results, so as to experience more of the pleasant feeling. Within this process, there arises complex, intense pleasure and pain, which are the products of human creation, which spin the new cycles of starting with feeling, vedana. It becomes the spinning of the wheel of birth, vinvaitaikud, or the cycle of samsara. In pleasure and pain, samsara vata. It cannot advance to realizing the higher benefits that can be attained in this life. In this light, the continuation of the process from contact is clearly a critical moment. The turning point in which feeling plays the key role, the direction the process will take for ordinary people, depends on the nature of the feeling. In the respect, the following observations can be made. First, the process that continues from contact is turning to the point between a pure cognitive process and the samsaric process, samsaravata. In the pure cognitive process, feeling is an minor factor contributing to an accurate and thorough knowledge. In the samsaric process, feeling is the main factor, with the power to dominate the outcome of the entire process. It could be said that whichever way human beings think and act, or however life proceeds, it is because of the sake of feeling. Moreover, in the samsaric process, human beings do not stop and simply cognize objects, learning about the world in order to relate and to deal with their environments in the most effective way, but proceed to become tasters of the world. As for the pure cognitive process to be technically precise, it must also be taken to branch off at the point immediately after contact. Given that cognition has completely arisen at contact, the process continuing on from here can therefore be distinguished as a separate part of the process altogether. And I would like to call it a process of direct knowledge and vision. It's called Nana Das Sana, or the process of unwinding, Vivata, as opposed to the process of winding, which is Samsaravata. The process of unwinding is concerned with solving life's problems, so it will be dealt with later in this book. In part 4, how should life be? And part 5, how should life be lived? Second, the process that follows from contact is the ethical turning point between good and evil, between skillful and unskillful, kusala, akusala, and between liberation and enslavement to the winding of samsara. Having discussed other parts of this cognitive process, we must now come back to the sixth sense base, ayatana, because all the processes discussed here depend on the start of the sixth sense base, which other factors are said to be important. We must accept that the six sense bases are also important. For example, we say that feeling is a critical factor in the process of tasting the world. It follows the six sense bases are also critical because they are the sources, the pathways of feeling. Feeling is something that human beings aspire to, and the sense bases are the channels that provide the objects of these aspirations. Summarizing, the six sense bases serve human beings in two ways. First, they are the pathway to cognition of the world, or the mediums through which the world is presented to human beings. They are the tools of communication through which human beings receive the information necessary to their proper dealing with the world in order to survive and to lead a good life. Secondly, they are the channels for tasting the world, or the doors that human beings open out to receive and experience those cognitive objects that are the delicious state of the world by looking, listening, smelling, tasting, touching, pleasure and entertainment, also imagining pleasurable things. The two functions are connected. The former is the primary and fundamental function, and it is indispensable. The latter is secondary. It is said to be complementary or even superfluous. The functioning of the six senses is identical in either case. The only difference lies in the volition, in the intention. Whether it is directed to cognition or to feeling. For the ordinary person, the importance of the sense tends to jump over to the second kind of function, the tasting of the world, to such an extent that the first function is simply to support the second. In other words, the cognitive process is only a factor for supporting the process of tasting the world. or for serving the samsaric process. Moreover, people's relationship with the world in active expression through deeds, through speech, and through thoughts will also become actions for serving the samsaric process. Doing, speaking, and thinking to seek and procure cognitive objects for enjoyment. The thicker the delusion that enshrouds them, the more their sensory activity will bog them down in the secondary function of the senses, such that life and the world for them revolve entirely around the six sense bases. It can be seen that even though the six senses are merely one portion of the five skandha and do not encompass all there is to life, and as do the five skandhas, they play a vital role in the process of our lives. They also have a lot of power over the directions of our lives, such that it may be said that life, as far as we know it and live it, is the contact and relationship with the world through these six sense bases, and that life has meanings through them. Once these sense bases no longer function, the world goes out. Life no longer has any meaning. The following passage in Pali in the Tipitaka canon succinctly shows the process described here and also helps connected the explanations given here with our discussion of the five skandha to show the process more comprehensively. Quote, dependent on the eye and visual form, eye consciousness arises. The convergence of these three is contact. With contact as condition, there is feeling. What a person feels, that one person perceives. What one perceives, that one thinks about. What one thinks about, that one imagines about. What one imagines about an object, on account of that imagination, the threefold kinds of complex perceptions in regard to the form cognizable by the eye, past, future, and present, spring up and beset one. Unquote. The text then proceeds to cover other sense bases and subjects of the same effect until all six pairs are covered. Once Papa Cha Sanya arises, there is even greater and more elaborate thinking, which leads to the rising of defilements, such as like, dislike, possessiveness, and jealousy, which permeate the thoughts and processes. Correct and incorrect knowledge. In discussing the spheres of cognition, we should know something about correct and incorrect knowledge. The two levels of Satchat truths. Students are sometimes confused by some of the Buddha teachings. For example, in some texts, we are told not to associate with fools, to associate with the wise. That the fool has always attributes and a wise person who those attributes, and we should be contented with what we have and not go coveting that belongings of others, and that the self is the refuge of the self, or that people should help each other. But then elsewhere we are told to examine and see as it is, that the body is simply a body, not a being, an individual, a self, not ours, not ourselves. To know as it is, that it is not ours, not ourself, and that all things are not self, anatta. We may conclude from this that there are contradictions in Gautama Buddha's teachings and become confused. When it is time to speak or act in accordance with everyday knowledge on the average person, we speak or act out of attachment, to our knowledge of how things really are, leading to confusions and problems for ourselves and for others. In the Buddhadhamma text, hoping to prevent this kind of confusion, teaches to distinguish satcha on two different levels. So distinguish truth in two different levels. Number one, samadhi satcha, conventional truth, otherwise called vohara satcha, truth in the manner of speaking, the spoken word. It is truth according to the common sense consensus as agreed upon or collectively perceived. It is a tool of communication for us to use in everyday life. An example is the use of words water and salt in everyday speech. Paramata satcha, ultimate truth. Truth in the highest sense, according to the ultimate level of truth that can be expressed in words. It is knowledge of reality, satcha dhamma, that causes all attachment and delusions to dissolve and enables one to establish a correct attitude towards the world, transcending defilements and sufferings, and having the mind that is free, unhindered, clear, buoyant, and truly happy. Sometimes some of these things are ultimately true, for example, mentality, physicality. So we have nama dhamma, rupa dhamma, vedana, sanya, sankhara, vijnana, and sita. Seta sika. We have form, rupa, nibbana, contact, basa, and volition, setana. One pointedness. The life principle, an example that conveys the general idea, is how in science the word water and salt are more specifically referred to hydrogen oxide, H2O, and sodium chloride, respectively. In any case, the ideas of the conventional truth and the ultimate truth, coined in the Buddhadhamma, cite passages from the sutras, indicating that these ideas were in the existence from the earlier time. However, in earlier times, the concepts were probably readily understood. So there was no necessity to specify on the two terms. The passage of the sutta cited in the Buddhadhamma is stated by Bhikkhuni Vijira as follows, quote, "So Mara, how can you conceive of a being? There is nothing but a pile of formations. No beings can be found here, just as when there is an assemblage of components, there is the word cart. So, when there are the aggregates, the skandhas, there is the conventions of being." Basically, she was confronted with Madhaho's, one of the identities of the illusion one, and she said to Mata, "How can you conceive of a being? This whole body is nothing, is not a being. It's just a pile of skandhas. Just like when we have to make the word cart, we have to put the letters together. So without the skandhas, without the aggregates, where is the being?" She basically said that to Mata hosts. Similar words can be found in many of the Buddha Vachana in the Pali Canon. For example, a bhikkhu who is a arihanta, a vanquisher of the outflows, may say, "I said," or "he said to me," but he is clever. He knows the language of the world and merely speaks in accordance thereof. An arihat is someone that has no classification of identity of the I in himself no longer, which makes him not able to be reborn again. It was his last stage. So saying that a bhikkhu who is an arihat, a vanquisher of the outflows, someone that already stilled all the asavas, the defilements, the 16 upe kilesas, the mental defilements, and got rid of them all, said, I said, or he said to me. But he is clever. He knows the language of the world, merely speaks in according thereof, knowing that even though he said, I said, or he said to me, doesn't mean that it's recognizing the self, because the Arihat has to describe things in terms of the classification in the world. Another quote said, these are worldly perceptions, worldly languages, worldly speech, worldly concepts that the Tathagata uses in speech but does not attach to it. So the Tathagata, somebody who is already gone, is on the last stage of enlightenment, and there is no return, no future rebirth, because everything is quieted. So that's what the Tathagata is, someone that is already gone. The writers of the commentary describes the nature of the sutras as Voharadesana, which they are largely given in terms of the spoken word or conventional terms, while the Atidhamma is Paramata Desana, because it is context mostly given in the ultimate terms in reality. The three distortions, Viparasa. Viparasa is distorted knowledge. Knowledge that derives or errs from truth. It refers to knowledge distorted on the fundamental level, which leads to misunderstandings, delusions, and self-deception. The incorrect mental attitude and conduct in regard to life, that the world. There are three kinds of vipalasa, or distortions. 1. Sanya vipalasa, distorted perception, perceiving an error of the truth. Number 2. Sita vipalasa, distorted mind, thinking in error of the truth. Titi viparasa, distorted views in error of distorted truth. Examples of sanya vipalasa, of distorted perceptions. A frightened person seeing a rope as a snake, crows and deers perceiving a scarecrow guarding a field as a person, a lost person mistaking north for south, south for north, someone seeing a row of stationary, blinking lights on a neon sign as they were moving. Examples of distorted mind. Cetana vipalasa, a person suffering from psychosis thinking that grass is food. A person suffering from paranoia thinking that whoever approaches is intent on harming him. Someone seeing a shadow moving in dark place and imagine it to be a ghost. And then we have the third one. Normally, Titi vipalasa, distorted view, or views in error of the truth, follows on from distorted perception, sanya, and distorted thinking. However, wrongly we perceive things, so we believe. However, wrongly we think and conceive, so we believe. For example, misperceiving a rope to be a snake, we may come to the conclusion and firm belief that there are many snakes in that area. Perceiving that the land around us to be flat, extending outward in a straight line, we come to the conclusion that the earth is flat. Thinking that for all things to arise fair and move around must be a controller and mover behind them. We may develop the firm belief that thunder, lightning, earthquakes, rains, and floods are watched over and controlled by gods. These examples are on a coarse level that is easily seen. but they may be called distortions to the point of eccentricity, to the point of being eccentric. In Gautama's Buddhist teaching, the meaning of vipassana is examined in its most subtle sense, penetrating to the fundamental levels, referring to the distorted knowledge that is not only within certain individual or groups of people, but also within almost all people without their knowing it. People fall under its power. The three kinds of distortion become one homogeneous group. The subtle for fundamental levels of distortion are explained in the text as follows. Bhikkhus, distortion of sanya, perception, distortion of thinking, and distortion of titi, view, are four kinds. What are the four? They are as follows. Distortion of perception, distortion of thinking, distortion of view, and what is impermanent is permanent. Distortion of perception, distortion of thinking, and distortion of view, that what is stressful, dukkha, is happy. Distortion of perception, distortion of thinking, and distortion of view, what is non-self, is self. The distortion of perception, distortion of view, and the distortion of view, that what is beautiful is beautiful. These are the four. These distortions are obstacles to the cultivation and development of wisdom, panya. And destroying them is the target of panya's cultivation. The method for cultivation of wisdom and knowledge discussed in Gautama Buddha's teaching are all useful for correction and removal of these distortions, especially the use of wise reflection. Yo niso mana sikara. Of the kind that dives into causes and conditions and analyzes component factors as they are with mindfulness. Gautama Buddha's word concerning the sense basis, all things, the world, and names. Bhikkhus, I will teach you the all. Please take heed. What is the all? Eye and form, ear and sound, nose and smell, tongue and taste, body and tangible, mind and mental object, these I call the all. Reverend Sir, they said, world, on what condition is there the world? What is said to be conception as the world? Herein, samadhi, wherever there is I, form, I consciousness, and things to be known through I consciousness, there is the world, or what is to be said of the world. Whatever there is ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, mental object, mind consciousness, and condition to be known through mind consciousness, there is the world, or what is said to be the world. Bhikkhus, I do not say that the end of the world is something that can be known, seen, or attained through traveling. But I also do not say that the person who has not reached the end of the world can make an end to suffering. Ananta replied, this teaching that has been given in brief by the Blessed Awakening One, not yet explained in detail, I understand to mean in full this. By whatever the worldling conceives the world to be the world, and holds the world to be the world, that is called the world in discipline of the noble ones. And by what do people conceive the world to be in the world, and hold the world to be the world? By the eye, by the ear, by the nose, by the tongue, by the body, by the mind. So do people conceive the world to be the world, and hold the world to be the world. Bhikkhus, I will expound the arising and the setting of the world. Please take heed. What is the arising of the world? Dependent on the eye and form, visual consciousness arises. The convergence of these three is contact. With contact as condition is feeling. With feeling as condition, desire. With desire as condition, clinging. With clinging as condition, becoming. Becoming as condition, birth. With birth as condition, or aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, despair. This is the arising of the world. So that sequence is Gautama Buddha's explaining the dependent origination, given it in the Dhamma Vakachana Sutra, his first sermon. Dependent on the ear, dependent on the nose, dependent on the tongue, dependent on the body, dependent on the mind and mental object, mind consciousness arises. This is the arising of the world. What is the setting of the world? Depending on the eye and the form, eye consciousness arises. The convenience of these three is contact. With contact is condition is feeling. With feeling is condition desire. What is the total abandoning of the desire without remainder? There is the cessation of clinging. So the nirota of upatana, the cessation of clinging. With the cessation of upatana, clinging, there is the cessation of bhava, of becoming. With the cessation of becoming bhava, there is the cessation of jati, birth. With the cessation of jati, birth, there is the cessation of aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, despair. Thus is the cessation of the whole mass of dukkha. This is the setting of the world. Dependent on ear, dependent on nose, dependent on tongue, dependent on body, dependent on mind and mental objects, mind consciousness arising. This is the setting of the world. Reverend Sir, they say. Mara, Mara, they say. Being, being, they say. Dukkha, dukkha. What is the condition for this Mara, or the concept of Mara, for this being, or the concept of being, for this dukkha, or the concept of dukkha? Herein, samyak, whatever there is I, form, visual consciousness, and the condition to be known through visual consciousness, there is mind, mental object, mind consciousness, and conditions to be known through the mind, consciousness. There is to be form, Mara, and the concept of Mara. A being or the concept of a being, dukkha, or concept of dukkha. When there is I, the enlightened ones, the arihats say that are happiness and suffering. When I is not I, enlightened one does not say there are happiness and dukkha. When there is ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, and enlightened ones, they say there are happiness and suffering. When ear and mind are not, the enlightened ones do not say that there are happiness and dukkha. The one truth for the deluded and those who know. Bhikkhus, just as with rice plants are ripe and full, and the farmer guarding the rice is heedless, the cattle eat the rice plants. Go down into the rice and recklessly indulge in their hearts, content. So when the unlearned, unenlightened being fails to guard contact to the six sense bases, he recklessly indulged to his heart content in the five kinds of sense pleasures. The Buddha here warns us to guard our six sense bases, ayatana, guard them. Because just like a rice farmer being heedless and not guarding the rice paddy, all the cows or animals go down and feed on the rice paddy and they lose their harvest. It's the same way that we have to not be recklessly and indulge in our sense pleasures. Bhikkhus, the sixth sense base of contact, basa ayatana, when untrained, unattended, uncared for, and unrestrained, are instruments for the arising of dukkha. These six bases of contact, when well trained, well tended, well cared for, and well restrained, are instruments for the arising of sukha, happiness. Is I a bind on forms, and forms a bind on the eye, ear, sounds, nose, smells, tongue, tastes, body, tangibles? Is mind a bind on mental objects, and mental objects a bind on the mind? No, I is not abiding on the forms. Forms are not abiding on the I. It is rather Chandra Raja, affection to the degree of attachment, contingent on both I and forms. That is bind on both I and forms. The mind is not a bind on mental objects. The mental objects are not bind on the mind. It is rather a Chandra Raja, arising contingent on the mind and mind object. That is both bind on both mind and mental objects. If the I were bind on forms, or forms were bind on the I, the living of the holy life for the complete destruction of dukkha would not be possible. But because the I is not bind on forms, and forms are not bind on the I, but rather it is Chandra Raja, arising. So Chandra is wholesome desire, and Raja is that's why it's important to understand that they're interlapping a lot of Pali terms in here, and it's just a lot of study. It makes me laugh. Arising, so Chanda Raja, arising contingent on the I and the forms, that is bind on the I and forms. The living of the holy life for the proper cessation of suffering, dukkha, is possible. It makes me laugh because for the normal individual just to pick up this book and read it, they would not understand it without understanding the Pali words. It's interesting. Gautama, the Blessed One, has eyes. The Blessed One sees forms with his eyes. But Chanda Raja does not arise for the Blessed One. The Blessed One has a heart that is well released. The Blessed One has ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. So basically, if the Buddha, the Blessed One, could reach it by cultivating and guarding his sense basis, we could do it too. And it has nothing to do with anything or the forms or the I or anything, because the Blessed One has the same faculties as we do. The expansive mind led by Panya, living to mindfulness, Sati. On what account can a person be said to be one who does not guard the sense doors? Some people seeing forms with the eye. So some people see rupa with the eye, incline and surrender the mind to rupa, forms that are attractive, and are angered and offended by forms that are unattractive. They do not guard the mind with mindfulness and abide with minds that are of small measure. They do not understand as it is the release and liberation of the mind, and the release and liberation through panya that would make evil, unwholesome condition arisen within them cease without remainder. Hearing sounds with the ear, smelling odors with the nose, tasting flavors with the tongue, experiencing tangibles in the body, cognizing mental objects in the mind, they incline and surrender the mind to mental objects that are attractive and are angered and are offended by mental objects that are unattractive. On what account can a person be said to be one who guards the sense doors? A bhikkhu, seeing forms with the eye, does not incline and surrender the mind to the forms that are attractive, and is not angered or offended by the forms that are unattractive. He guards his mind with mindfulness, abides with the mind that is broad and boundless. He understands as it is the release and liberation of the mind, and the release and liberation through wisdom that make evil, unwholesome states already arisen within him cease without remainder. Hearing sounds with the ear, cognizing mental objects in the mind, he does not incline the mind to surrender to attractive mental objects, and is not angered or offended by unattractive mental objects. advancing on the path of freedom and happiness. Bhikkhus, before the enlightenment, when I was still an unenlightened bodhisattva, I reflected to myself thus: what is the attraction, the sweetness, the pleasant taste of the eye? What is the danger, the flaw, the flaunt of the eye? What is the escape, freedom, independence of the eye? What is the attraction, the danger, the release of the ear, of the nose, the tongue, body, and mind? I thought to myself, happiness and gladness arisen on account of the eye. Is the attraction of the eye. The fact that the eye is impermanent, suffering, naturally subject to change, that is the danger of the eye. The destruction of the affection, the abandoning of the affection contingent on the eye, is the escape from the eye. The same said for the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. As long as I has not yet realized truly as is the attraction of the 6 internal sense bases as the attraction, the danger of the as the danger, and the escape as the escape, I did not declare that I had realized the complete, excellent enlightenment, Anuttara Samma Sambhojana. The attraction, the danger, and the escape of the 6 external sense bases are then explained in the same manner. Bhikkhus, one who sees I as it is, one who sees forms as they are, who sees I consciousness as it is, who sees visuals contact as it is, who sees feeling, be it pleasant, painful, or neither pleasant nor painful, arisen contingent on condition of the eye contact as it is, does not attach to eye, does not attach to form, does not attach to the eye consciousness, does not attach to visual contact, does not attach to feeling, be it pleasant, painful, or neither pleasant nor painful, that arises contingent on condition of eye contact. Since he is not attached to, not immersed in, and not deluded, is wise to their fault. The 5 skandha of clinging do not form or grow. Moreover, desire which brings renewal of being is accompanied by delight and lust, and delights in this and that is abandoned. Restlessness of the body and restlessness of the mind, distress of the body and distress of the mind, rankling of the body and rankling of the mind are all abandoned by him. That person experiences well-being both in body and in mind. The view of such as one is right view, the thinking of such one is right thought. The effort of such a one is right effort. The recollection of such as one is right recollection. The concentration of such as one is right concentration. As for the person's bodily deeds, verbal deeds, and livelihood, they are already purified. On this account, that person is said to have developed the Noble Eightfold Path to full. The same said for the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. I'm going to leave you guys off with that today, and we're going to pick up with practical value. Sodārahang samā samputo pakawā putang pakawatang apiwademi sawakato pakawata dhammo dhammang namsami supatipano pakavato sāvaka sankho sankhang namami.